Welcome and thank you for joining me today. Imagine settling into your seat on a routine flight, the hum of the engines lulling you into a sense of security. Then, out of the corner of your eye, you notice something impossible, something chilling. This isn't the kind of story you expect to hear from 30,000 feet in the air, but it's one you won't forget. Let's dive into what happened on that extraordinary flight. Sam's heart skipped a beat when, peering out the plane window, he saw a figure sprawled on the wing. Initially thinking it was a trick of the light, the reality of the situation sunk in as the figure moved. Passengers screamed and gathered, pressing against the windows, their expressions a mix of fear and curiosity. Sam, gripped by a chilling sense of dread, reached for his seatbelt, his mind racing with questions. Sam couldn't believe his eyes. The man was wearing some kind of mask, but his features were being morphed by the air rushing past his body. He wondered how on earth the man had enough strength to hold on to the wing this whole time, but little did he know that the man was only a small part of what was about to happen. Sam pulled his seatbelt as tightly as he could. He had a window seat, so he could still see the man clearly. Suddenly, the plane began to shake, and the seatbelt sign turned on, prompting a burst of panic as the passengers rushed to their seats. "We're experiencing a bit of turbulence, nothing to worry about," the pilot said over the intercom, not letting anyone know he was actually lying. The man was still on the plane's wing, and Sam couldn't keep his eyes off him. Suddenly, the plane began to lose altitude, and it looked like they were preparing to land. But when Sam looked down, all he saw was the ocean. What was the man doing on the wing? Why did the pilot lie? And what would happen to Sam and the other passengers? It was supposed to be a 3-hour flight from Houston to Washington, D.C. Sam was on his way to speak at a big event, and he was looking over his notes one more time when he noticed the kid sitting in front of him had suddenly stopped moving around. She had been annoying Sam for the last 15 minutes, so it was very noticeable. He didn't think much of it at first, but when he suddenly heard more people gasp, he curiously looked up. Almost everyone sitting in front of him was looking out of the window, so of course he looked as well. For a moment, he thought his eyes were deceiving him as he saw a human figure lying on the airplane's wing. Suddenly, it moved, and people began to scream. "There's someone on the wing!" a woman yelled, causing panic inside the plane. The cabin crew did their best to get everyone back to their seats, but it was too late. A seed of panic had been planted, and it was growing fast. Sam reached for his seatbelt, wanting to be safe in case things went south. People scrambled to their seats, tightening their belts like maniacs. The man signed something, but Sam couldn't understand what it was. Just as Sam thought he was beginning to understand the man, the plane began to shake, and he was snapped back to reality. The sound of the pilot's voice reverberated through the intercom. "We're experiencing slight turbulence, nothing to worry about." Suddenly, the plane began to lose altitude, and for a second, Sam thought they had arrived at their destination, but his relief quickly dissolved when he looked down at the ground. As the plane continued its descent, Sam's eyes widened in horror. Below, instead of the familiar landscape of a runway, there was only the vast expanse of the ocean, getting ominously closer. Water splashed against the wing, and he could see waves turning as they approached. It felt like they were about to make a water landing. Compelled to look again, Sam pressed his face against the window. The man on the wing was gone. His heart dropped. Had he fallen? Just as Sam was about to turn away from the window, something caught his eye. A shadowy figure, like a hand, appeared briefly under the plane's wing and then disappeared. Was it the man or something else? Sam looked around, seeing the worried faces. Why wasn't the pilot explaining anything? The plane seemed inches from the ocean. Everyone braced, clutching their armrests, expecting a crash. But the plane steadied, skimming just above the surface. Sam and the others exhaled in relief, their bodies tense. Sam squeezed his eyes shut, heart thumping wildly. When he dared to look again, land was underneath. It was a shocking sight. The passengers murmured, puzzled by the sudden appearance of terrain where seconds before there had only been water. The plane descended toward an island. Why here? Why were they even over the Pacific? None of it made sense. Despite the confusion, the plane landed smoothly on the island's makeshift runway. No bumps, no screeching, just a gentle roll to a stop. Passengers glanced at each other, bewildered but relieved. Sam's mind raced with questions. Why here? What was going on with this flight? Ladies and gentlemen, we need to handle a quick procedural matter. Please remain seated. The pilot's voice echoed through the intercom. Arguments broke out among the passengers, voices raised in a cacophony of demands and questions. Sam pressed his face against the window, spotting movement on the ground. People were bustling around, which made him think they might finally be let out. Just as everyone was getting ready, the plane lurched forward. Sam's heart sank. The plane was moving again, but no one knew where to. Uncertainty gripped the cabin as passengers exchanged confused looks. Was the ordeal not over? In the distance, a large structure loomed, likely a hangar. The plane steered straight towards it. Sam and the others watched intently, trying to guess the reason. Could this be a standard procedure, or was something unusual at play? The proximity to the hangar suggested they wouldn't be flying again soon. The engine shut down, and the abrupt quiet felt eerie. From below, a clatter and bang echoed, sounding like people were moving inside the baggage hold. With the seatbelt sign off, people began roaming the aisles, their voices raised in demand for explanations. Sam saw his chance. He slipped by the preoccupied cabin crew who were trying to soothe the anxious passengers. His heart raced as he moved stealthily towards the front of the plane, keenly aware of the crew's distraction as they dealt with the unrest. Reaching the cockpit door, Sam paused to knock but stopped when he heard voices inside. The pilots were talking, their tones laced with concern. He pressed his ear closer, catching bits of their worried conversation. "I can't believe this happened," one pilot said, his voice a mix of worry and disbelief. Sam clung to the door, ears tuned to the pilot's troubled whispers. "We're going to lose our jobs," one pilot lamented. "They have to find him," replied the other, his tone urgent. It was clear they were discussing the mysterious man who had been seen on the wing. Sam felt a chill run down his spine as he realized the pilots were as in the dark about the man's fate as everyone else. Suddenly, someone tapped Sam on the shoulder. It was a cabin crew member, her expression stern. "What are you doing here?" she demanded, gesturing toward the seats. "Please go back to your seat immediately." Reluctantly, Sam turned around and started back, his mind still racing with the pilot's words and the unresolved mysteries. As he walked back, a piercing scream erupted from the back of the plane. A passenger was pointing frantically out the window, her face a mask of terror. Sam quickened his pace, pushed by the urgency in the woman's voice and the alarmed faces around him. Outside, the man was clambering back atop the plane. Below him, officers had their guns drawn, pointed upwards. The scene was surreal, like something out of a high-stakes thriller. Shots rang out, sharp and loud against the hangar's walls. Everyone ducked instinctively, screams mingling with the sound of gunfire. No one on the plane knew who the man was or why he was there. He didn't appear dangerous or armed. Sam stared out the window, his confusion and fear growing. The passengers whispered among themselves, each trying to concoct a story that would make sense of the bizarre sighting. Looking out again, Sam saw the man lying on the wing, but now the cops were also climbing onto the plane. The officers moved cautiously, their presence escalating the situation further. The surreal spectacle held everyone's rapt attention, turning their fear into a morbid curiosity. Finally, Sam saw the man being handcuffed and escorted away by the police. Relief washed over him as he watched the officers lead the man towards a police vehicle parked near the hangar. It seemed the ordeal might finally be over, but so many questions remained unanswered. As the man was taken away, spontaneous applause broke out among the passengers. Relief was palpable in the cabin, yet the clapping was mingled with a sense of bewilderment. All the passengers were then guided to leave the plane through the emergency exit that had been opened earlier. After a few tense minutes of waiting on the tarmac, a bus arrived to transport them to the main airport terminal. Once they arrived at the airport, an announcement gave them two options: return home or continue to Washington on another flight. Sam, along with the other passengers, weighed his options. The day had been long and full of surprises, and the idea of another flight was hardly appealing, but his commitment in Washington was important. Curiosity got the better of Sam, and he asked an airport employee about the mysterious man on the wing. The employee disclosed that the man was a refugee trying to hitch a free ride in the baggage hold before being caught. Sam was stunned by the desperation such an act entailed, reflecting on the lengths some go to for hope. As he contemplated the refugee's plight, Sam's phone buzzed relentlessly. He had missed his conference, and his inbox was flooded with messages from his manager demanding an explanation. Each vibration was a reminder of the real-world implications of today's delay and the fallout he now faced. With his job potentially at risk, Sam knew he needed to manage the situation delicately. He began crafting replies, explaining the day's chaos, and citing the extraordinary circumstances. Thankfully, the incident had been covered by the news, providing him with the external validation needed to corroborate his story to his skeptical boss. Sam's efforts at damage control paid off when his boss called to confirm he'd seen the news. The widespread coverage of the bizarre airport incident validated Sam's explanation, easing the tension with his manager. Relieved but exhausted from the day's events, Sam pondered his next steps, hoping for some semblance of normalcy. Soon after the day's chaos, Sam decided to head home and rest. His mind was swirling with the events he had witnessed, and he needed time to process everything. Once home, he collapsed into his favorite chair, letting the quiet of his own space wash over him, a stark contrast to the day's tumult. Sam uploaded the videos he had taken during the incident to his online profiles. They quickly gained traction, capturing the attention of thousands. The raw footage brought reality to his story, and soon he was contacted by a news show inviting him to discuss his experience on national television. His account became a focal point for discussions about airline safety and unusual incidents. The refugee who had tried to hitch a free flight was officially charged. The news spread among the community and online, sparking a mix of sympathy and outrage. This case highlighted issues far beyond simple legalities, touching on human rights and desperation. The incident left Sam uneasy about flying, a shadow of anxiety that lingered each time he thought about airplanes. However, determined not to let fear dictate his life, he faced it head on. Gradually, with each flight, the anxiety diminished, allowing him to reclaim the confidence he had lost. His journey of recovery was challenging, but essential to his sense of freedom and adventure.